Is the global trade order collapsing under pressure, or are we merely witnessing its long overdue transformation? Welcome to TVAI. The dramatic escalation of economic hostilities between the United States and China has once again brought the world to the edge of uncertainty. With President Donald Trump's decision to impose an unprecedented 104% tariff on Chinese imports, what was once considered a stable and multilateral trading environment is now splintering into competing blocs, each redefining their roles and alliances in a fast-changing world economy. While Washington frames this move as a bold stand against what it calls decades of unfair trade practices by Beijing, the international response tells a much more complicated story. China, refusing to bow, has launched retaliatory measures, and not just symbolically. Along with tariffs on American goods, it has begun strengthening trade ties with the European Union, Latin America, and several African nations, signaling a shift toward a more decentralized economic order where U.S. dominance is no longer assumed. Meanwhile, U.S. allies are treading carefully. Canada, once a reliable partner, has expressed open frustration, imposing its own set of counter-tariffs in a rare rebuke. The European Union is holding emergency trade consultations, wary of being drawn into an escalating conflict that could destabilize global markets for years. This tit-for-tat economic warfare is no longer confined to tariffs. It's beginning to redefine how countries interact, negotiate, and strategize economically. New trade corridors are being discussed. Currency exchange agreements that bypass the US dollar are being explored. Institutions such as the BRICS Alliance, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa are experiencing renewed momentum, now viewed as potential alternative engines of global growth. At home, Trump's administration insists the tariffs will bring back American manufacturing and protect domestic workers. Supporters hail this as a necessary shock to the system, a wake-up call to industries and governments that have long relied on the status quo. But critics warn that such protectionist policies come at a high cost. Rising consumer prices, supply chain disruptions, and the very real possibility of long-term isolation from a world that is rapidly adapting without the U.S. Economists are split. Some see this as a painful but needed rebalancing. Others describe it as reckless brinkmanship that undermines decades of hard-won diplomatic and economic collaboration. Wall Street, too, is reacting with visible anxiety. Markets have fluctuated wildly, with investors scrambling to reposition portfolios amid growing fears of a global downturn. But perhaps the most under-discussed consequence is the erosion of trust. For decades, the United States was seen as the anchor of a rules-based trade system. That perception is now under threat. Emerging economies are rethinking their alliances. Smaller nations are exploring regional partnerships instead of relying on global powers. The multipolar world that academics have long theorized is, in many ways, already here. Born not from ideology, but from economic necessity. China's resistance is not merely a matter of pride or political positioning. It reflects a broader understanding that in a globalized era, unilateral aggression can galvanize opposition more swiftly than ever before. And with a growing number of nations feeling squeezed between Washington's hardline stance and Beijing's assertiveness, many are choosing a third option: realignment toward mutual independence and resilience. As countries navigate the ripple effects of this tariff conflict, one thing becomes increasingly clear. The era of unquestioned American economic supremacy may be giving way to a more competitive and fragmented landscape. This is not to suggest a collapse of U.S. influence. Far from it, but rather a recalibration. And in this new era, agility and coalition building are becoming the new currency of power. Take the recent moves by the ASEAN bloc. Historically caught in the middle between U.S. and Chinese economic spheres, these Southeast Asian nations are now accelerating intra-regional trade agreements and pushing for a digital economy framework that reduces dependency on either giant. Similarly, in Africa, a continent often seen as peripheral in global economics, There is a growing push toward Pan-African trade, with the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, aiming to become the largest single market in the world. Latin American nations, long tethered to the United States through geography and trade deals, are also reconsidering their options. Brazil and Argentina are in talks with China about currency swaps that bypass the dollar, while Mexico, ironically the subject of past tariff threats from Trump, is quietly deepening its relationships with Asian and European markets. Even within Europe, long-standing assumptions are being tested. Germany, facing economic slowdown, is pushing for a new industrial policy less reliant on global supply chains. France is advocating for a European strategic autonomy, both in defense and in economics. This kind of thinking would have been dismissed a decade ago as unrealistic. Now, it's becoming policy. But the US is not without its strategic assets. Its innovation ecosystem remains unmatched. Its financial institutions, despite global diversification, still dominate the world stage. And perhaps most importantly, its democratic model, despite turbulence, continues to inspire trust in rule of law, something autocratic rivals cannot easily replicate. Still, Washington's challenge is not just geopolitical. It's philosophical. Can the US maintain its leadership while engaging with a world less willing to follow? Can it transition from being the sole architect of the system to being a participant in a more democratic, if messier, global order? As America doubles down on tariffs, the rest of the world is learning to live without it, or at least to hedge against its volatility. This may, in time, benefit all sides by creating a more balanced and resilient global economy. But the path to that equilibrium is fraught with tension, uncertainty, and the ever-present risk of miscalculation. For now, the battle over tariffs is more than a trade dispute. It's a referendum on how the world will be governed economically in the 21st century. And like all such referendums, its consequences will reach far beyond stock tickers and GDP forecasts. Will America adapt to the new order it helped create, or attempt to bend it back by force? Will nations seek compromise, or will they retreat into protectionist instincts of the past? And more importantly, what system, if any, will rise from the ashes of the old? This isn't just a test of economic endurance. It's a battle over who gets to write the rules of the future. What do you think? Is the world better off with a decentralized trade system, or does it still need American leadership to hold it together? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more in-depth analysis on global affairs. Stay informed, stay ahead, right here on TVAI.